All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Michael Persad. I'm with Church Brand Guide, and I just want to welcome you to our coaching session today. I'm going to actually share my screen right now so you guys can see a little bit of what we have going on. So we have some special guests with us today. We'll get to them here in just a moment, but they're going to help us with our marketing. How do we run our social media marketing and be effective with it? I think we all know that social media is important if you're on this call. But we may not know exactly how to use it well as a church. And of course, we just believe here at Church Brand Guide that the local church is the hope of the world, and we want to do everything to help you to reach more people with the vision that God has given you. So Church Brand Guide, this is where basically we want to serve you as your virtual communications director to help you become your church's brand expert so you can attract more people and help them to become contributors of the vision. We want you to steward your resources well, so you say yes to the right things. Ultimately, seeing more guests show up, more life change taking place, and getting more support for the vision that God has given you. There's 4 areas that we like to hit on. So one is to get clear about who we are, who we serve. Once we do that, we want to create the right experience for those people that we serve. The third thing we want to do is then attract new people. Great brands are really good at attracting new people coming in. Brands that don't do that well are brands that get kind of strange. So we don't want to be that. So we need to attract new people. Once they come, we want to get some buy-in. So we want to make sure we're asking for them to buy into the vision that God's given us. So today we're going to be hitting quite a bit on number 3, which is how do we attract people as we talk about social media. So all 4 of these areas are important, but number 3 is what we're going to hit on today on this call. I also like to give tips on how do we help our teams. So if you're probably leading a bunch of creative people, and creative people are kind of like, it's like herding cats. Like, how do you do that? So I want to give you some tips on how we figured out in different ways how to do that fairly well, but we're learning a great deal. But I went down to VU Church, which is a church down in Miami. They're a really amazing church down here. And I was talking to Sam, their communications director. In fact, he's going to be on one of our calls later on in the future. I'll let you know when. But I was asking him, how do you build a great team? Because I showed up at this creative night, and they had like 50 creative people that were super excited and energetic about what they were doing. Everything from building the website to social media, photography and video, and graphic design. Like, all these people were just amazing and super excited. And so I was like, how do you do it? And he was basically saying, we just focused on creating a great culture. We want to create a culture where cool people that are creative like to come hang out. And he's like, hey, listen, I know you're early. At Vibrant Church, we're about 15 weeks into starting Vibrant Church. And we don't have the most talented people that are coming to the church right now. At least I haven't found them. Maybe they haven't raised their hand quite yet. But we have some people that are willing, and we're trying to use them as best we can. If you're on the call, you probably know that situation, that you have some willing people, but they may not be the greatest graphic designer or photographer. They give you the best that they can, and that's awesome. But what I found is that if we focus on creating a great culture with the people that we have, then we'll attract people that want to be a part of that do have some more abilities to offer. And that was one of the things at VU that we learned, is that not everybody is equal, especially in the creative field. It's not like maybe a greeter or an usher where you can train them up a lot. In the creative field, you need some people with some skills, or else you'll be spending a lot of time trying to train them up. But focus on creating a great culture. One of the first steps we did was I hosted just a thing at my house, and we invited all the creatives to come over, and we just did root beer floats. And we just hung out for about an hour. And the big idea is just to build a culture. Hey, let's get to know each other, because in creative world, it gets to be project-based really quick. Hey, did you get this done? Did you get that done? Did you get this done? And again, as a leader, you're like, man, I feel bad asking them for stuff all the time. And as a creative person, if you're on the flip side of that, you're like, man, they're always asking me for stuff. So we want to just invest into that culture, and hopefully that helps you just maybe maybe a next step for you. Also, one of the resources I wanted to share with you is this great book called The Power of Moments. It's by Dan and Chip Heath, and just talks about how, as a organization, how can you create moments that add value to people? So as a church, we have a lot of moments, baptisms, baby dedications, even others that you probably know specifically for your church. But, oh, sorry about that. Let me turn off my notifications here. But how do we create moments and add value to people by capturing those moments? Maybe it's a photograph of that baby dedication that you can give to that person. But there's some great ideas and concepts in this book I'd love to share with you. But let me get into our topic. We have our guests that are here. They're going to help us to learn how to attract people using social media. Kent and Megan have been amazing. We've got to know them over the last 4 months. Pastor Brandon decided that we should do the very best we can with the resources that we have. He's like, hey, how can we take the resources that God has blessed us with and make sure that we're using it to the very best of our ability? So he reached out to Kent and Megan and they were at Ashby and Gabriel, a marketing company that's not too far away from where we are. We just happened to find that out. We didn't know exactly where they were, but they came highly recommended. So we gave them a call and they happened to be in our area. So they've done a great job helping Vibrant to launch. We launched on August the 18th. And we get comments all the time of how people just see us everywhere on social media in this area. And I just credit Kent and Megan just for helping us. Megan more so than Kent. Sorry, Kent. Megan's really been working with us quite a bit. And Kent's been awesome too, just to support everything that's going on. So Megan and Kent, welcome to the call. How are you guys doing?
Doing well. We're really excited to be here.
Super excited, man.
Awesome. Thank you for being a part of this. I know you have a busy season happening right now in your world. So I really appreciate your time to hang out with us and share with us. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to you. I know you have a presentation that you just want to go through with the idea of just helping our audience learn how to do this better as church. So let me just turn it over to you and you guys can jump right into it.
Awesome. Yeah, before I kick things off with the deck, I'll explain just a little bit more about what we do. So we are a digital marketing agency and we work in a variety of spaces, but one of our main areas of focus is church. And in the last couple of years, we've worked with hundreds of churches across the country for all kinds of things, from one-time campaigns to full-on launches like what we've done with Vibrant. And we love this space because there's so much opportunity for innovation. And something that churches do really well compared to a lot of the other industries we work with is they have a genuine and authentic heart for this. They truly believe in relationships and connecting with people in a real way. And so really all that we're doing is we're taking that genuine relational aspect and translating it into a digital presence. All of the principles of real world communication and relationships are applicable here. There's really nothing that changes just because we go online. So I just wanted to give that background just as we jump in here. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen.
All right, while you're sharing your screen, I do want to let everybody know that if you have any questions, feel free to use the chat feature. Shoot those in at the very end. We'll try to come back around and answer some questions.
Awesome. So jumping right in here, we like to start with this metaphor about a marriage proposal. And we tell people, you would never walk down the street and propose marriage to a stranger. They would obviously say no. They might even call the police. And what people try to do all the time with their social media presence is they try to make a really big ask of their audience without taking the time to build up a relationship. For churches, usually this looks like asking people to come to your church before you've built any kind of trusted connection with them. And it happens with the best of intentions, but it doesn't work. And what we'll find a lot of times when we start working with a church is that they say, yeah, social media is something that we do. We know we're kind of supposed to have a social media presence, but it's really never brought us anyone new, or it doesn't really work very well, or we don't really know what we should be posting. So this is a really great guiding principle just to start out with when we start thinking about everything from ads to a content strategy. The kind of primary element of this is that we must always provide value before we ask people to do something. Most of the time, if people are not attending church, there's some pretty significant barriers to entry in their life why they're not doing that. We live in a culture where everyone is aware of the church. They're aware of probably the basic elements of the gospel. And so it's not a matter of them not knowing. They have other reasons why they're not engaging. And so if we don't establish a connection and build that trust first, we're not actually doing anything to overcome those barriers, and it's not going to work. So this brings us to the concept of a funnel, which is a pretty common marketing concept. It's very well echoed in a lot of the things that Michael shares. He uses some slightly different language, but we're talking about the same thing. Cold audiences are the people who you want to come to your church, but they are not coming yet. They might know a little bit about your church, but they probably don't know a whole lot. And they're probably in a few key demographics. Something that we really encourage churches to do is remember that you can't be all things to all people, and to identify somewhere between 3 and 5 demographics of people who are your target audience. Maybe you have a really great marriage ministry and you want to focus on bringing couples in who might need that. Maybe you have really a great youth aspect, and so you're looking to target families who have children in middle school and high school. Thinking about those things, specialization and niches can be really important. And you're not ever going to be able to have a broad mass appeal. So cold audiences starts with identifying who it is that you actually want to be targeting with your content. Good content is going to target 1 or 2 of those demographics. If you're just creating general, generic, broadcast type messages, you're going to end up in a situation where it doesn't truly appeal to anyone. And then moving down the funnel, we are starting to engage with people. We've built up a little bit of a relationship. We're retargeting them, which we're going to talk about later in this presentation. And those are people who maybe they've visited the church or they're regularly attending, but they're still kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out. And then we've got advocates, and these are people who are active, vocal supporters of your church. They might volunteer. They are probably there most Sundays, and they're really bought into the vision and care about what you're doing. So all of your social media, everything that you do, is going to appeal to one level of this funnel. Most of the time, the majority of your content, when we're talking about attracting people, that third step, is going to focus on your cold audience. And when it comes to cold audiences, the thing that we have to focus on is providing value. So even though as your church staff, you may know a sermon series that you're going to offer is going to be full of a lot of wisdom, and it's going to be really applicable to people's lives, and you're bought in that this is fantastic teaching, most likely that's not going to feel like value to people who are outside of the church and outside of that world. So that's not really what we're talking about. What we're talking about is finding things that meet their real pain points as people. Things like people are looking for a purpose. They're looking for connection. They might be stressed financially or with their time, and finding ways to alleviate those things. We just ran a really successful church campaign for a church where they decided to offer a free parents' night out. They didn't actually require the parents to come attend anything at the church. They just offered free childcare. And that was a huge need for the community. They are located in a lower income community where childcare is very expensive, and that can be a big factor for parents who want a date night out. And people start to realize, hey, this church cares about the things that matter to me, and they're going to provide value before they ask me to do something that's uncomfortable for me. So top of funnel content is going to kind of fall there. Warm content focuses on engagement and education. You want people to understand who you are more deeply. And if you're looking for a great example of this, I encourage you to look at Vibrant Church. Pastor Brandon and Michael have done a really fantastic job of creating engaging content that shows people who Vibrant is. And most of the time it's not coupled with a hard ask for them to do anything. It might occasionally be. And then because people are gaining interest, awareness, engagement, they're starting to establish connections that are just beyond social media, and they're actually connecting in real life. These are the people who are becoming advocates.
And I think a key thing with the funnel in this and just with this map is really looking at your congregation and the people who are visiting your church or attending, and seeing the percentages of that group of how many of these people are either warm, how many of these people are advocates, how many do we think we could reach in the cold audience. And being able just to be aware of that is really important. And then understanding, okay, how can we take this warm audience and make them advocates? Or how can we go from cold to warm and then warm to advocate through your content and through your social media?
So this is an important principle because anytime you post something online, whether it's on your website or in your emails or on your social media presence, you want to think about where it falls in the funnel. And if you are sending a message to a cold audience, maybe you're posting a Facebook post and you're boosting it to people in your area, but you're acting as if they're a warm audience, it's not going to work. And if you're constantly sending cold messaging to people who are already advocates, then you're wasting your resources and they're going to feel like, hey, do they actually know me at all? Am I connected here? So it's really important to think about that whenever you're planning out your digital strategy. So kind of moving from that funnel, we're going to move into these key points of what should your church be doing with social media. We really are passionate about seeing churches go from acting from a place of obligation where social is something they just have to do and it's kind of a side task and it's tedious, to being a central part of your communication strategy. And the ways to do that are to create engaging and relational content, something with a sustainable budget and schedule. So what we see churches do a lot is maybe they have an intern for a semester or something like that, and they'll have a big boost in content and then radio silence for months. And it kind of comes in these tidal waves, but there's no consistency. And that damages your digital presence. It's not good for the Facebook algorithm. And it's not good because you kind of give people the hope of some kind of relationship and then there's no follow through. So we encourage people, it's not necessarily that more is better, sustainable is better. And so really you should be putting budget behind everything that you put online. So if you're posting on Facebook, even if it's a $5 boost, Facebook is essentially a 0% organic reach. They've changed their algorithm in the last couple years. And so money is unfortunately an important part of this. But we know that churches typically have a pretty stretched digital budget, if at all. So focusing on strategic posts and not just more. Develop a funnel that uses ads, landing page, and email. So thinking about where each part of your digital presence fits into that funnel structure that we talked about before. And creating mid-funnel opportunities in the real world. Things like the event that I just mentioned, the Parents' Night Out. Creating opportunities that you're promoting through social media that are not just come to church. So thinking about what events you already have in the schedule for your church and focusing your digital strategy on promoting those things. And trying to think about them from the perspective of someone who is not already engaged in a church space, specifically with the language that you use, the visual appeal, wanting to make sure that those opportunities are a more accessible place for people to get involved. And then authentically addressing the barriers to entry people have. So if we never talk about why people are not coming to church, then we can't begin to address those problems. So finding content, this is another place that Vibrant has done a really fantastic job. They have talked about, their recent campaign is Savage Jesus, and they've talked about some more radical elements of who Christ is that engage with culture, and they don't feel like a distant, removed church aspect. So finding ways to think about what are the actual concerns of people in that cold target audience, and how do we create content that's going to be of interest to them and start to address some of those barriers. The next thing we wanted to go through, and there's a lot of content here, we'll make sure you have access to these slides after through Michael, but we want to go through what it is to have a content strategy. One of the central questions here is, who are you trying to help? And what are the top 3 questions that your followers have about you or daily life? I can't tell you how many times that I go on a church Facebook page and I can't find where they're located or what time their service is. Most likely if someone's finding you online, those are the 2 pieces of information that they're trying to find out. So trying to make sure that you answer people's questions clearly and effectively. And then they're going to have some deeper questions. Do we believe the same thing? Do we have the same theology as your church? What kind of community do you have? Are there going to be people who are like me when I get What if I get there on Sunday morning and I don't know where to park and I don't know what to expect and I don't know how long the service is going to run? Trying to think about those questions that people have and how you're fitting into their life and the pain points and stresses that they already have. And then focusing on a few channels. So this comes back to that more is not better, sustainable is better concept. You don't need to have a robust digital presence on every social media platform. What we should do is think about who our target audience is, what social media platform they're using. For a lot of churches, that's going to be Facebook. You're targeting people in kind of the 35 range, young families, moms specifically are more engaged on Facebook. Maybe your church is targeting younger people and you need to be on Instagram. Or others, we can talk about other spaces as well. Typically, churches are not going to need to engage as much on LinkedIn, and maybe you choose someone on your team who has a Twitter presence, but those are not going to be as critical elements. Most of the time, it's going to be choosing to invest in Facebook or Instagram. And then here's a few ideas in this right column here of ways that you can engage on these platforms. It's hard to promote yourself. It feels inauthentic most of the time, and it comes across like that. So asking people who are in your base, in your congregation, who are in that advocate space to speak for you, getting them on camera. Something we really encourage churches to do is your content can't all just be your pastor, because most likely that's not someone who everyone feels they can connect with. So trying to have a variety of people on camera who are in your pictures, who are in your videos, who reflect the demographics you're trying to reach. Creating a survey, trying to find out what people enjoy and don't enjoy, getting that information and feedback, and that's a very relational method for communication. That's something you can do through social media. Interviewing with church visitors, ask people deeper questions about sermon topics or anything that you can leverage into content that is outside of just coming to church, but kind of follows along with the communication flow of what you're already doing. And putting content to people who are on the fence. Facebook has some great retargeting options where you can target people who visited your website or who have engaged with a post or have watched a video. And finding those people who have shown that they have interest and continuing to grow your relationship with them.
Yeah, and I think a strong idea here to sort of think about is what pieces of content you need to have for the goals specifically you guys are setting, because it, like Megan said before, you can't target just all parts of the funnel all the time unless you have, a massive budget. But what's important is maybe your church has a large group of middle of the funnel, warm audience people that you think that could become advocates. What type of content, what kind of events, what type of things you need to be doing on social media to start getting those people more excited and giving them opportunities to become advocates. So that number one sort of like suggestion on the right column of giving people in the warm audience opportunities to become advocates is a great way to sort of bridge that gap between warm and advocate.
Planning is a really essential part of this. We know that churches typically have about 3 big seasons: Christmas, Easter, and back to school. So we want to find ways to have a really robust digital presence around those, and then also consistency in between those seasons. Thinking about how we're going to engage in those spaces. Like I mentioned before, every time we post on Facebook, we want that to be a boosted post. That's how we win with the Facebook algorithm. That's how we start to build a following. It doesn't have to be a huge amount of money. It can be $5 or $10, but we want to make sure that we're investing in those channels. Look to stir engagement, ask questions, look for interaction. Facebook Live is an amazing tool, and utilizing that to actually connect with your audience. And scheduling things in advance so that your digital strategy is responsive and not just reactive. Instagram, we want to make sure that in addition to each post feeling high quality, that your actual feed when you go onto your Instagram profile looks appealing and attractive and people would want to follow you. Instagram still has a pretty substantial organic reach, so it's not as important to invest in boosting posts here. What's more important with Instagram is quality and consistency, making sure that you've got a really planned schedule for keeping content coming frequently for your people. And using design templates to streamline the planning process. These are 5 simple steps. I'm going to go through in just a moment, if I have enough time, and show you his Facebook Business Manager, which is where the back end, some of you may have used it before. We usually find churches have not done a ton in that space. But here's 5 steps you can take today to start improving your digital strategy. The first one is just get input. Most likely you don't represent every demographic of your church. So think about people who are similar to the people you're trying to attract and ask them for their honest feedback about what you're doing online. Set up Facebook Business Manager. I'm going to show you what that looks like in just a second. And click around, explore the options that are available to you for targeting and advertising, and spend some time learning how to do those things. If you don't already have a budget, that's going to be important. Start talking with your team and figuring out how much money you want to put behind this and how you can move it into a more central space. Think about the year ahead and identify those mid-funnel events that you would like to use digital campaigns to promote, things that are going to be attractive to people who are outside of the church space. And sketch out your funnel. Start identifying how you're offering value and making sure that you're offering value before you ask people to take a big step. So I'm going to close out of here, and I'm going to do a little screen share of Facebook Business Manager. Some of you have probably used this before. This is the platform that's connected on the back end of Facebook for being able to actually run ads. So I'm going to go over here and just do a little sneak peek of Vibrance. Is that okay, Michael? Perfect.
That is great. Go ahead.
Okay. So I'm just going to jump right in and we're not going to be able to go over all of this today. It takes a very long time to be able to learn how to work all of these things, but I want to give you some freedom that there's really very little you can mess up by just clicking around in here and learning how it works and figuring out what's available to you. So your boosted posts are going to appear here as well as your ads. This is structured sort of like a Russian nesting doll. The biggest view is account overview. Campaigns fit inside of that. Ad sets fit inside of campaigns, and ads fit inside of campaigns, of ad sets, excuse me. And I'm going to go over here and I'm actually going to create a campaign, just as a little mock. I'm not going to actually publish anything, but just to get your brain rolling about some options that are available to you. Just tell me if we're running slow on time and you want me to switch into question and answers.
Let's just do the guided creation because that is more novice friendly.
Perfect. So switching into guided creation, this is a tool Facebook offers to be able to give you some input about what to set up. You can tell Facebook what you're trying to accomplish with your ads. If you are trying to get traffic to a landing page, maybe you're trying to generate email leads, messages to your page, or even events responses on Facebook. So you're going to name your campaign and choose between a daily budget or a lifetime budget. I'm not going to go through the best practices for all of this technical setup. We just don't have time at the moment. But what I do want to show you is some of the options that are available for targeting. Because a lot of times when we present this funnel concept to people, they say, yeah, we get that, but how? Facebook allows you to actually create audiences. And you can see that Vibrant has done a good job. They've set a lot of these up already. And they have found people who are engaging. So they might start with a top of funnel audience. Let's say they are interested in reaching people who are interested in C.S. Lewis. Maybe they're running a campaign related to something like that. This might be a top of funnel interest because someone who lives in their area and is interested in C.S. Lewis is not exactly knowledgeable of Vibrant. We just know that they might be in our target demographic. And then let's say we send people with an ad campaign of this interest to a landing page. We have the ability to come back in here and find people who marked that who visited that page. So we can create audiences for people who visited the website in general or people who visited a specific landing page, anything like that. And that's when we know they're in the funnel because they've showed some interest, they click through the ad, And now we're going to continue to engage with them and provide additional content. So you can see all of these options in here. This is where I would really encourage you to just take some time, get in here, get messy, click around. You're not going to mess anything up until you hit publish. You're not going to be charged for anything you do in here. This is a free platform to use. And start getting an idea of what might be available for you. So you're going to have to pay to actually run the ads, but setting up this account, looking at what you might want to set up for a strategy, there's no cost for that. And you can also create lookalike audiences. So if you have a substantial email database at your church and you think we want to reach more of the same kinds of people who are currently engaging with us, there's an opportunity to upload that data and find people who are similar to them. There's a lot of options in here, and there's plenty of training online. If you're interested in really getting in deep with this, Facebook offers a free resource called Facebook Blueprint, and you can go in and learn how to actually set these campaigns up and run them for your church. Campaigns can cost anything from less than $100 for a very simple campaign up into thousands and thousands of dollars. You can decide how much money you want to spend and put behind it. So it's great to get in here, start experimenting, and see what works for you. Anything you wanted to add to that?
No, that's perfect.
Perfect. So I'm going to stop share. Any questions? Michael, is there anything else you wanted me to cover more in depth?
Just kind of recapping the big idea, the why behind a lot of this stuff is it's basically this idea of fishing for men. So Facebook, as you can kind of see, as you got into a little bit of that technical aspect, it allows us to really find out where people are. And as you've been teaching us, actually, Megan and Ken came out and did a workshop for our team. We, as part of our just deal with them, we were like, hey, can you just come out and show us how to do this stuff and educate us? And that's kind of where this call came from. But we can see like, wow, how amazing is this that we can find out what's going on in our city and be able to reach people where they are. And, you know, for many of us on the call, that's really what we're about. We're churches that are trying to reach people where they are. You know, maybe you have concert lights in your auditorium, or maybe you have like banners up in your lobbies or something that's not a typical traditional way to reach people. This is just another way for us to take a look at how do we reach people where they are and just get better at it. Megan, I did want to ask you, what is a healthy budget that you would recommend for a church to have?
It depends on a couple of factors. It depends on the size of your geographic reach. So obviously you're going to have to spend more if you have a bigger radius. And it depends on what you're asking people to do. So what we find is we often run campaigns for under $1,000 if a church has got some really great event that they can invite people to, because there's a component of that where nothing truly sells itself, but some things sell themselves more naturally. And so if you have a really great offer, something like that, like free childcare, you're literally giving something away. A campaign budget of $500 or less might get you where you need to be. If you are talking about inviting people to a sermon series or a harder ask, especially if you are trying to reach a broader audience, you need to be spending more. So we know for our clients outside of the church space, we typically recommend having at least $1,000 a month budget for Facebook. We know that that's not a realistic option for a lot of churches, so we encourage them to start where they're at. That may just be boosting posts for now, and maybe that's putting $5 or $10 every time you post something on Facebook. So there's not necessarily a minimum, but we start to see much healthier results when we're around that $1,000 mark.
And the more budget you do spend and are careful with and are measuring, the more data that is actionable. So sometimes, you know, if your budget can only, you know, manage doing boosting posts, then that's fine. But make sure you're measuring that data so you know how many engagements you're getting from the posts, and then you can bring it up to a higher level of strategy and say, is this something that's helpful towards the goals that we're trying to go for? And if it is, great, and continue and expand that. And if it's not, you could potentially look at nixing it and then looking at how else you could use that advertising budget on Facebook or Instagram. So it's all about spending the money, but also understanding the specific metrics you're getting back for that, the data you're getting back for that, and then knowing, hey, is this actually benefiting us? Like, as for our communication, or maybe we need to do a harder ask, or maybe we need to be pushing a softer content, or maybe we need to be saving this for a specific season in our church calendar that could actually leverage this budget better.
Yeah, that's great. Just to let everybody know that's on the call, if you're on this call, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask a question. In fact, let me pause right now. Any questions from anybody on the call? All right, so I have another one. What are some tools that you recommend to help manage some of this? Like you mentioned a scheduling software, but what are some actual tools that you recommend?
Do you want to go through the ones we use for Instagram?
Yeah, so there's a few. The first one we'll start with is Unum, UNUM. I don't actually know if that's how it's pronounced. I'm just saying it. But it is essentially a visual mapper for your Instagram, and it's essentially a place where you can schedule and then map out what your Instagram could potentially look like visually. Like what we've said in the slides, that's a very, like, the visual aspect of Instagram is so important. It's either the first 3 seconds someone lands on your Instagram page profile and they see how it's laid out, is whether or not they're going to decide if they want to keep scrolling through or digging into your church or clicking on the link in the bio. So that's a very important aspect of it. I think that's free, and then there's like tiers of pricing for that if you want to get into more premium features. Another tool on Facebook, this is a great tool I use almost every other day, and it's competitor research. And essentially what you do on Facebook is you go to a page that is a bigger brand, and it doesn't have to be a church, but you could say Nike or something like that. And then on the Facebook page, there's a transparency section. So Facebook has been urged to be more transparent about how they are managing, advertising and where spend is going. And so there's a box for every single page that has so every business page that has a transparency section, you can click in there, and there's a whole library of ads that brand is currently running. What's great about that is you can actually see what the bigger brands are doing in terms of advertising, in terms of what their copy looks like, in terms of what their ad creative looks like. You'll see the videos they're running. And if they're putting spend behind it, then they're making a very conscious decision in leveraging ad spend and content to sort of grow their brand. That's a huge tool that I use all the time, because it sort of helps me sort of see what trends are happening in terms of ad creative and advertising, and helping me guide our own decisions here. I do want to mention that the business manager, to set one up, the URL is business.facebook.com. So if your church or your page doesn't have one yet, that's essentially the URL, and it'll guide you through that process. And I'm trying to think of another really helpful tool that could...
You can plan your content strategy out on anything that feels useful for you. So whether that's just creating a basic calendar and filling in when you're going to post what, so you get an idea of making sure you have enough content to stretch and you're not posting too frequently. Facebook allows you to schedule posts without having any kind of outside software or platform, but I still like to be able to see on a calendar. So I might even just make myself a grid on a document and kind of lay out what I'm going to do. There's other tools for doing that as well, but instead of focusing on learning a dozen new platforms just to be able to do simple things, if you have platforms that already work for you, just kind of incorporating Facebook and Instagram into those things can work well too.
All right. Yeah, thanks for sharing. We'll start to land the plane, so to speak, on our conversation with Kent and Megan. Thank you so much for your time. I did a screen share real quick, and I do want to share one thing that I'm working on. This is just a basic schedule for what a a week might look like at Vibrant Church. So again, working with Kent and Megan, we created a weekly rhythm for our media. So I have I'm kind of in charge of our team, and I have somebody that's in charge of social media posting. So I want to equip them with as much as I can to help them win in their job. So we put together this calendar. On Sunday we do this, on Monday it's this, Tuesday it's this. So Megan, maybe just a little bit on the fly, a little workshop here. Just tell me what you think of what this looks like, and if there's any adjustments that you would recommend. So Sunday we have an invite to the church before service starts, Instagram story that we run, Facebook Live at 10 o'clock. Our service starts at 10:30. Share a story about life change in the afternoon. So after service is done, maybe share a story about somebody's life being changed in some way. Monday, that's kind of the Instagram approach, and Facebook kind of mixed in there. Monday we have a post a link to the message from Sunday. Tuesday, share a highlight, a graphic or a video clip from this past weekend. Wednesday, we're doing a rotation of posts between our growth track, which is our membership class, connect groups, kids ministry, dream team. Thursday, it's a dream team highlight. So somebody that's on one of our teams. Friday, it's a message hook about the weekend. So we're pointing people towards the weekend. And Saturday, it's smiling faces that invite people to serve on to service on a Sunday. Any thoughts?
Yeah, there's some great stuff in here. I think especially things like an invite to church, that fits in with the concept we were talking about before, that we're going to try to push that toward a warmer audience. Those Instagrams and Facebooks might be targeted to people who have visited the website or have shown some kind of interest online that they might be interested in attending. I remember a great piece of content that Vibrant put together about local coffee shops that were near the church. And it was nothing related to the actual church service, but I think that could be a really awesome thing to drop in here as well, as community-related blogs. Those kinds of pieces of content are widely interesting to people, and they're not church-specific. So trying to make sure that we have a little bit of that ratio of things in there that people who are more uncomfortable in that space can engage with as well. I really like having a rotation of different types of content, so it's not just Tuesday we do this, Wednesday we do this. Michael's done a great job of having a consistent schedule here while still providing room for it to be dynamic and interesting and different every week. I really like that he's emphasizing showcasing different people. This is not all Pastor Brandon centric content. He's got a lot of stuff in here about the dream team, about other people who are involved with the service. That's going to help showcase, specifically Vibrant is an incredibly diverse congregation, so wanting to be able to demonstrate that really well online. This is very people-centric content. I like that in most of the visuals for these types of pieces, there's going to be smiling people. That seems really welcoming. We know that in life and in digital marketing, the two main needs that people have are to be known and to be loved. And a lot of Vibrant's messaging focuses on providing value through the form of community. And they have done a great job of showcasing people who just enjoy spending time together. And they are kind of demonstrating that here by talking about how people are interacting with each other. And that may not all come with a weighty theological message, but we show people who are probably lonely. A lot of us are lonely sometimes, finding and having that need met through the church. That overcomes one of those barriers to entry. So I see some really great things here. I like the consistency. This is a lot of content, so if you look at this and you feel overwhelmed that you don't have the staff to be able to put this together, that's okay too. Vibrant has been at this for a while, and they're really emphasizing this in their communication practices, but if that's not something you can do, and maybe you can only post a couple of times a week, that's okay. It'd be better if it's more, but like we said, going back to that word of sustainability.
Yeah, thank you for that feedback. I'll provide this as a resource for you guys that are part of our membership. So we have a member area where you can just click into one of our big topics. This is the attract people category. So within your membership, you can click on that. We'll have a replay of this video available for you so you can rewatch anything. And then also I'll provide that document. I actually took some notes while Kent and Megan were talking. So my notes are down here. When they had some resources or anything they had mentioned, I went ahead and put that in there as well. So you guys will have access to that as well. Any final questions from anybody on the call before we wrap it up?
Sorry, just one thing. Under tools, it's UNUM.
Thank you.
Yep. But everything else, this looks great.
Perfect. Well, hopefully the big idea here is to just help you learn how to attract more people on social media. We talk about how there's kind of this grid that we talk about a lot in our circle of how do we turn strangers into first-time guests. And social media is like a really powerful tool that we can lean into that points people from not knowing anything about who we are as a church to help them ultimately make that decision to come to a weekend service. And if we have clarity about what the goal is, then we aren't posting the Tuesday night usher meeting on Facebook because nobody's going to care about that. That's a stranger. They don't know anything about us. So having clarity is a big deal. So let me wrap this up. Kent and Megan are they're part of Ashby and Gabriel. Again, we just hired their company to help us, and it's been tremendous for us to be able to have them as a part of our team. We literally hired them for maybe 3 months or so to help us launch, and they're just continuing to work with us. Like I said, they did some training for us, and then as needed, we might reach back out to them for Easter or some other things. They're just part of what we do and who we are now. But we've seen some really great results from these guys. And we hear all the time, we have a growth track class where new members come in. We have it every week. And there's about 5 people every week that's coming into that growth track class. So that's been amazing. But we ask in that class, like, how did you hear about us? And everyone is like, hey, it's usually Facebook, number one, or somebody asked them to come, so which is to be expected. But everybody sees us on Facebook. In fact, they tell us overwhelming, like they just see us all over the place on Facebook, and it's really a credit to what Kent and Megan have done, and then also what we've been able to continue to do because of the way they've set us up well. So hopefully this helps you out. Again, let me just pause. Is there any final questions before we close it out? Megan, if you have any final thoughts too, let me open it up to that.
Yeah, I just want to circle back that everything that we do and everything that we teach for digital marketing is essentially getting people to take the things that they know about relationships in the real world and use those same principles when they're online. And building relationships and creating trust and providing opportunities for authentic connection and not just salesmanship or cheap tricks, which churches are usually pretty good about that, but finding ways to really build relationships with people online. And I think that's a great just guiding principle. If something feels strange to you that you wouldn't do in a real world relationship, it's probably a bad idea to do for your digital marketing. And if it feels like something good that you would do that would bear positive fruit in your real world relationships, most of the time there's a way to translate that into how we communicate online.
Awesome. Thank you for those final thoughts and for everything else you've done. Your presentation was really good, super enlightening. When we saw it for the first time, our team was just, oh, that makes so much sense. Thanks for unpacking that. So very good. Again, this is the Church Brand Guide. My name is Michael Persad, and I want to just serve you as a virtual communications director. It's kind of the idea behind all of what we do. You can check our stuff out at churchbrandguide.com. There's a membership area if you want to go deeper in what we're doing, more of a coaching thing. And there's also some stuff on YouTube that you can get that's just some free stuff that's available to help you with your marketing and your brand building. So thanks for joining me and for taking some time today, and I'll see you guys next time. Thanks, Megan. And Kent, thanks again. Kent's in the background there. He's just kind of hanging out. I love that. Take care, guys.
Bye. Thank you.